This is the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, session number 302, my number one method for booking better hypnosis clients.
Welcome to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast with Jason Linett, your professional resource for hypnosis training and outstanding business success. Here's your host, Jason Linett.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Jason Linett with a solo episode this week all about the business of seeing clients, all about the business of hypnosis. And as I like to say, this way we can help you make it rain. So we're going to be talking about a very simple principle, a principle that's commonly referred to in the marketing world as an application funnel. And let me give you the overview first before I start to break down some of the very important details inside of this. Because it's not just about putting a schedule application on your website, though I am going to teach you about putting a schedule application on your website. It's instead about changing the way that people enter into the conversation with you as a practitioner so that you're positioned as an authority and so that also you're only working with those people who are actually serious about making the change. So the basic setup of this is that someone can land on one of my websites, and instead of seeing the phone number of saying call this number right now as it used to be, instead there's a way that they can click a button. It gives them private access to my calendar to pick a time that's available to them. They then answer a few questions, and then a few days later, usually about a day and a half to 2 or 3 days later, sometimes more, then we're hopping onto a call. And then it's from there that I then am explaining the process that we're going to do together and booking that actual session package there. So that's the sort of 30,000 foot view of this. Let's start to break down a few components of this before I give you the details, which just as a heads up, you could probably go off and attempt this on your own and get some of this done. By listening to this week's episode, you'll be further along in having something a little bit more robust that's going to work better for you. And yes, toward the end of this episode, I'll mention a resource that I'll make available to you that helps you to launch this thing even faster, even easier, and have a step-by-step guide to make it happen. Let me call out one thing first that is something I've said to my students for a bunch of years, yet let me now share it here on the podcast. Whenever you're looking at what I am currently doing, as I know that a lot of hypnotists are looking at my virginiahypnosis.com website, that's for the most part a local business, though thanks to this podcast, thanks to the Hypnotic Language Hacks podcast, thanks to hundreds and thousands of hours of videos and other resources online, and thanks to the year 2020, it really isn't a local business. Yes, a fair number of those clients are local, but by the nature of online Zoom and Skype and all their video platforms, I see clients around the world, which I was doing even prior to 2020. And again, if anyone out there is struggling to move your business online, go back into this Work Smart Hypnosis library, go to episodes 260 through 270. All of those were very specifically laser focused on how do you move your business online. We made that as a free resource available to everybody back then. So worksmarthypnosis.com/now online gives you a full tutorial of exactly how to do that. So you should always ask yourself when you're looking at what I'm doing, which by all means, take a peek, but it's where you should always ask yourself, what business am I speaking to? Because as of now, there's technically 3 arms of what I do. So virginiahypnosis.com is all about working with clients as a hypnotist. Meanwhile, worksmarthypnosis.com is an international training company, which is all about certification programs, online programs like Hypnotic Business Systems and Hypnotic Workers, guest events, and that's again really more a little bit of a B2B, business to business, because that's teaching other hypnotists how to do hypnosis better. Though the trainings that I offer, like the one coming up in January, are also appropriate for people who are brand new to hypnosis and wanting to learn and then get certified. So do you see the difference there? virginiahypnosis.com is about working with clients one-to-one for personal change. WorkSmartHypnosis.com is a training business. Meanwhile, the recently revamped JasonLinett.com is the new hub of the new podcast, Hypnotic Language Hacks, which is mostly bringing people who are business owners, online marketers, into the world of hypnotic communication by way of a new program, Business Influence Systems, in a high-level consulting process that I call the Business Influence Accelerator. So these are very different markets because the Jason Linett brand is a little bit less about the personal development, though we get into some of that with my accelerator clients. The Business Influence Systems program is a little bit more around hypnotic communication, NLP patterns for ethical influence, and some of my personal strategies that I've revamped over the years. When going back again in reverse order, Work Smart Hypnosis is really an audience that most of you would see a little bit more frequently. And I promote differently from one segment of the business to the other. So I just wanted to give a moment to kind of highlight that. Because when you see what I do for Work Smart Hypnosis, it's very often quite different than what I do to get clients. Just again, it's a different audience. It's a different way that people respond. So always have that in mind. This is the learning lesson of what I just talked about. If you can identify who your target market is, you can now start to reverse engineer where are they gathering? Who are the gurus in that industry? And then what are their buying decisions? So I can go a little bit more direct to sale with clients. Meanwhile, clearly, I lead with education for the training events that I offer, as you're hearing right now with a free podcast. Welcome to number 302. We've been at this for a while. So I mentioned that, though this concept of an application funnel, which is what this week's episode is all about. Let me give you some of the lineage behind this, because I fought the idea even though I was consistently using it to hire other people myself. So rather than pick up the phone and call, think about the convenience factor that I'm able to go onto a website. I'm able to pick a specific time that I can look and see I'm available. And I can see that the person I want to speak to is available. Even better, we're going to get into this in a bit, even better, I can answer some questions in advance, which may help me to go ahead and select or appropriately deselect that service. And then leading up to that event of the actual consultation, the call, now we're able to have a logical, educated conversation, and I'm more ready to jump in. So for whatever reason, I kind of resisted the idea of plugging this in, and I'll tell you a little bit about why, perhaps. Over the years, I've always looked at, if you look at the shape of what I do, so often at a conference, someone says, wow, you're doing a lot these days. And I always smile and I always respond, it sure looks that way, doesn't it? To borrow a familiar line, it takes a village. There's a full-time website designer and graphic person. I've got an incredible team of podcast editors. Holla back to Podcast Network Solutions. I've got a video editor. I've got someone who, the various Facebook groups that I run, yes, it's me actually in there posting, but someone else is running the admin of approving posts and letting people in. And it looks like it's a one-man show, but there's several digital outsourcers that are making this all work, which, again, look at the nature of the volume of what it appears to be that I'm doing and recognize that I'm only responsible for one active part of that, and the programming is handed off to someone else. So it is completely okay, if you are a solo practitioner working out of a solo office or even out of your home, working with clients one-to-one, and that's perfectly all right. If that's the way you want to do it, more power to you. Let me just show you some better ways to get there faster, easier, and eliminate some of the challenges that I keep hearing about in the hypnotic profession. So what I'm getting at is I have a massive staff of a virtual team. And what I was looking at was, the volume of phone calls I used to receive. Maybe I should hire someone else to take those calls and maybe screen them to some degree for me, or even train them in my sales process. The folks that are inside of Hypnotic Business Systems, one of the most reviewed sections of that private community that I run is the 500K phone process, which when I published it all the way back to 2013, it had generated more than $500,000 of individual client income. And again, that goes back quite some time. It's a much bigger number now, to say it politely. So I've taught other hypnotists how to use my phone sales process. So can't I now just teach someone else to run the phone sales for me? And here's how my brain works. I will always look at what if there's a way that I can automate with technology? What if there's a way that I can duplicate myself and by doing so maintain the quality of the communication? And the rule is I only ever can do this if I can enhance the user experience of the client, which I hear less of this next thing now than I used to. But it used to be if I would get up and I would talk about this topic, and I'll say this next statement politely, at one of the hypnotic conferences that mostly gathers a older audience, enough said, I would get pushback on talking about this concept. Oh no, my people need a hands-on approach. They need that one-to-one interaction, to which I would tell you, my clients are getting that. But my clients are getting it more consistently. Resources are not forgotten to be sent to them, and everything happens on schedule. So the benefit of this now becomes, I looked at, could I hire someone else or could I duplicate myself? And that's the route that I chose because that's what makes most of the rest of the business work. To which I'll give you the outcome now. I come into my office on the days that I'm here less days now because the number of projects that are up in the works, as well as we're homeschooling our kids and the fun of everything that is 2020. And I can now look at my calendar and see who is already scheduled to speak with me. And here's where it gets even better. I can also see answers to the questions that I've asked them before we've even spoken. Even better is that when my team, that's right, when the team sees specific requests come through, we can start to do something magical that we call onboarding, which is that if you filled out the application on my website and you're mentioning that you have a fear of driving on highways or some sort of travel-related fear, in advance of getting on the phone call with you, we're sending you video testimonials of people who I've worked with that exact problem and talking about their outcome. We're sending you testimonial surveys of people who have talked about that. We might be even sending you research on hypnosis, basically priming the pump as to just how effective this process is and positioning why it is you need to work with Jason Linett for this issue. That's what this now is accomplishing for us. Here's the other side note to this too, and this is a bit of a personal rant that I've been doing for years, so buckle up, this is going to get fun. The number of conferences, the number of posts on Facebook groups, the number of questions I would often get around resistant clients. Or how about this one? No-show hypnosis clients or problematic hypnosis clients. And guess what? I don't get those. Honestly, I don't. And yes, there's a lot of moving pieces inside of my business. There is a massive digital footprint to which if a person ever asks me, well, why should I work with you rather than someone else? You know, I could sit there and do the joking pat myself on the back routine and rattle off best-selling book, one of the most downloaded podcasts in the industry, Hypnotist of the Year, TED Talk, and all that. And instead, I just simply say, well, I highly recommend for anyone you're looking to hire, anyone you're looking to work with, do a Google search. You want to make sure you can find evidence of who they are and what they do beyond their own personal website. And yes, I've created over the last, since Virginia Hypnosis, since I opened up in Virginia back in November of 2009, there is a massive digital footprint, all satisfying that proof that as I built it to be, this is the guy who does this. So that's one element of that. I'll call that out. It's also where all the videos that are on virginiahypnosis.com are built to do three very specific things. One, to build rapport with my potential client in advance of them even reaching out to me. Going for that know, like, and trust factor even before I'm ever asking them to buy. Point number two is the content in the videos is built to attract those people who are a match for what I do and who I am passionate about working with. And the third one is a slightly negative, but if you really think about it, it's massively positive. It's to not attract in the people that I want, but also, yes, to propel away the people who are not a fit for how I work with people. So the stories that I'm telling, some of the stories are slightly abrasive, yet positive. Some of the language is a bit colorful. I would say if you've tracked me over the years, we've done away with the blue shirt, the purple tie, the put together presentation, and instead, the more I can use some, let's use it, common vernacular language to say it politely, and wear the unbuttoned shirt and just talk to you like you're a friend. That was what was the style for Work Smart Hypnosis since day one, and that then morphed over to Virginia Hypnosis, and now that's across the board, everything that I do. So again, build rapport, attract in the people that I want, and respectfully propel away the people who I don't want. So that's also an element of this, which that's going to help you to boost this application funnel concept, which, as a side note, I have also now replicated this in everything that I do. If someone opts into a webinar, which then sells into a product or a service, a little bit deeper in the follow-up email sequence, only then does there appear an option to say, hey, chances are you've got some questions about hypnotic business systems. If that's the case, click here to schedule time to talk about the program. Or people looking at my accelerator program on jasonlinett.com. Again, there's a calendar application for this exact reason. So really the benefit here is a little bit of a principle that I've taught for years of compliance precedes suggestibility. Think about that for a moment. I need you following a set of instructions before I could ever lead you into hypnotic suggestions. This is a principle that Anthony Jacquin also talked about in his book, Reality is Plastic. And I give you the example that I live by. This is going to sound profound. This is a principle that I teach inside of hypnotic workers and even inside of my certification programs. In almost every first session with every new client, there's a moment where their arm is extended out in front of them and their eyes are open and they're looking at their arm and they can't bend that thing. And it's not just for the sake of doing a hypnotic stunt, though it is a really cool hypnotic stunt. It also becomes an incredible metaphor for change, of deciding what it's time to break free of, and as you've made that change for yourself. Notice how easily that arm can lower down slowly. That's right. So it's a way of linking the hypnotic phenomenon to the change process. But let's set hypnosis off to the side for a moment and think about the compliance instructions that have to occur for that moment to even happen. I already mentioned one part of this. At one point, their arm is stretched out in front of them. So do you realize that before that process can even become a magical hypnotic moment, I need their arm up in the air out in front of them and maintaining that sort of posture? That part's just instruction. The rest of it then becomes hypnotic suggestion. Or let's go back to doing like a suggestibility test with an audience. If I'm attempting to do like finger magnets with an audience of people, and here's one person who's not even participating, well, do you think if I'm about to call for a volunteer, I've respectfully or disrespectfully drawn a little bit of a red X on that person's face and I'm not going to call them? Here's why. Because if I can't get that compliance out in the audience, how well do you think that's going to go as a volunteer to do a quick demo of that nature? So this is a very important step, I think, in the hypnotic process. It's a huge principle of what I teach in terms of hypnotic change work. But do you see now how the same principle can also come into play inside of your business? Which makes me briefly tell a story about moving out of the office that I previously was in for the last 7 or 8 years before moving in April of 2019 to the office that I actually bought and I'm sitting inside of right now. As I'm moving out, the guy in the office next door, it was kind of a phone center for some kind of real estate company. He's outside, he's having a smoke break. Cool. And he calls over to me and he goes, "Hey, are you the hypno guy?" To which I go, "Yes." He goes, "Cool. How much is it to quit smoking?" And I respond, "There's a quick video on my website that explains the process." He responds back, "How long is the video?" You might already guess where we're going here. I respond, "It's only about 10 minutes. He replies, "Oh, I'm not going to watch a 10-minute video. How much is it?" I respond, "If you're not going to watch a 10-minute video, you're probably not going to quit smoking with me." Remember, he's on a phone process for real estate, and this is the guy who goes, "Damn, that's good. Nice." So he got the intention of what I was saying. Now, fast forward the story. It's like 7 or 8 months later. I'm now settled into the new office pre-everything coronavirus. So the phone rings, and actually, let's tell it in the right order. Someone fills out an application on my website. I get on the call. I recognize the voice. It's him. So the story changed when he made it a priority to actually sit down and watch the video, answer the questions on the application. and then schedule the specific time to talk. He increased that compliance threshold, and by doing so, was much more receptive to the process. Because again, if I could not get him to follow those simple steps at the beginning, how well do you think the rest of it would have gone? So are you seeing the fact that this is not just a principle in business? This is actually a conditioning principle to train your process? Because I'll call out a few things here. First of all, keep in mind, not everybody is looking at your website when they're in a position to make a buying decision, which if you've heard me before, that is the most polite way that I know to tell you that they're on the toilet looking at their phone. True story. And the reality is, most web traffic now is happening on mobile devices, which, by the way, if you're not making sure your websites are mobile responsive and looking at how they load on mobile devices, I forget, it was either Perry Belcher or Frank Kern, people who are well known in the marketing world. I think it was Perry Belcher who I heard say, just assume that no one is ever going to look at your website again on a desktop or laptop computer, because the odds, the statistics are already practically there. So the fact that someone's, awake at 4 a.m. because they can't sleep, they're thinking about the problem. Now they're browsing the web, they find your website. They're not going to call at 4 a.m. But instead, here comes the opportunity that the one principle that I teach the strongest inside of hypnotic business systems is that you should always sell one thing. You should sell the next step. And by all means, head over to virginiahypnosis.com and take a look at this in some form in motion. I'll tell you why I say it that way here in a bit. Because the one thing that's being sold is click here to get started. Click here to get started, which then brings them to a video, which in the classic format of this for me, gave them a calendar application, which I'll branch off on that here in a moment, and had them answer a few questions, and then they were scheduled in my system, and I'd call them at that designated time. You do not have to do this manually. No. Instead, the beauty of this is there are all sorts of calendar-based softwares that are out there. The one that I recommend the most is called Calendly. It's free if you're using it for just one calendar application. The cool thing about Calendly, though, is that if you pay for the account, you get benefits like text message reminders, better automation principles. You can build multiple calendar applications as well, which when you go from a free account, which doesn't cost you anything because it's free, to instead a paid account, buckle up everybody, this is a huge investment. $10. Worth every penny. In fact, not to boast, I got 2 Calendly accounts. Check me out. Yeah, because we have one for Jason at virginiahypnosis.com, and we've also got one for Jason at jasonlinett.com. That way, different applications for different parts of the business just streamlines things and makes things easier, and I can deal with the frustration of logging out and logging back in several times a day. One of these days, we're going to merge it all down to one, but for right now, I like the worlds being separate. So for a very low investment with Calendly, but again, there's other platforms that are out there scheduling different automation systems like Kartra or Rapport or even Keep, that's Keap, have calendar applications built into them. There's also software like Acuity. I was briefly using Schedule once. Actually, not briefly. I used them for 2 years. Yet I just wasn't happy with their pricing structure, even though they've changed it recently. And just, it was kind of buggy for programming and the reminders. Calendly was just what you see is what you get, and just so much easier, and that's the one that I recommend so much that even I pay for 2 accounts. So what I mentioned here is that what you could do, if you really wanted to, give them the $10 a month, integrate it into your calendar, it syncs up, and it will only show availability that 1, you've set up, and 2, that you actually have. You can also use this for booking your appointments with your clients too, which is what I do. So let me actually do this in real time here. I'm just going to open up my actual Calendly account. I know you're just listening to me right now, but I'll mention some of the different applications that I've built over the years. So I do a different time frame for seeing clients for Stop Smoking. That's its own application funnel. I have my hypnotic transformation program, which is my one-to-one services now inside of a bigger process. There's a specific consult for that. Something that I've done on Work Smart Hypnosis Live for those of you that are instructors or often offer trainings of some nature. Again, I don't lead with this, but there's the option. If you've got questions, here's where you can schedule time to speak with me. I will say that in 2020, the training business maintained the same as it had been for years. I will say this politely, it just took a little bit more effort to maintain some of the same numbers, if not grow stronger in some of the markets that I speak to. And having the opportunity to get on the call and speak with me if they had questions was a big factor of, again, boosting some of those numbers and making myself more accessible. I do private consulting. This is a link over on virginiahypnosis.com, a private consulting program of mine. And if it's someone who's in the US, I just give them my standard consultation link. However, I've got people in Australia who it's a different time zone, and I've created specific calendar links for them. Takes me all of a few moments. So the format of this is my website is now selling one specific offer. Click here to get started. That then brings them to that schedule application. They answer a couple of questions, they pick a time, and now we get to onboard. So feel free to look at, what I've done over the years, though I'll share in a bit of an update to this. Let's talk for a moment, though, about questions, because it's not just about having that schedule application, I found. It's also about the quality of the questions that you ask is a major factor, again, about attracting in the people that you want and propelling away the people that you don't want. So with all of these applications, here's a couple of the ones that I've got in front of me on a resource that I've built. I'm asking for their first and last name, their mobile number, their email address. That way there's a follow-up and a reminder for it too, which these softwares will send reminders leading up to it very easily. Here's a fun one that I plugged in 2020. How would you like to connect with Jason at our scheduled consultation time? And at one point I had 3 options: Apple FaceTime, Zoom video, phone call. By the way, most of these calendar application forms actually will integrate with Zoom. So when someone schedules with me now, they can click the box. I've taken off the Apple FaceTime one, but they can either check the box for a phone call or they can check the box for Zoom. And the benefit of the Zoom one is that now it automates the link for them. So I don't have to go into Zoom and program it. It just all talks to each other in our wonderful era, which just, again, with Zoom, kind of like Calendly, if you pay them the small amount of money every month, you get all the cool bells and whistles, so give them the money. I can ask in advance, what's your goal? At one point, I had a checkbox of check the issues you'd like some help with. This was actually really cool because people could check multiple boxes, which meant if they were reaching out for stop smoking, maybe they were also now informing me that they wanted to lose weight and perhaps there was a stress issue they wanted to work on. And that was an easy, I don't call it an upsell, but I call it an upgrade. That was an easy upgrade to then go, hey, now that you've quit smoking, how's that going with the weight loss? Well, great, here's what we can do for that. And again, increasing the customer lifetime value by serving them better. Here's a beautiful question to ask. What have you done so far to address this? The beauty of that question is it's going to show you readiness for change, as well as, let's say this politely, we are running a business. It's going to show you their willingness to spend money on the issue. It's also going to inform you if this person is just kind of a tire kicker, curious versus fully committed, which I'll call it out. Here's someone I scheduled with for weight loss the other day that's mentioning he's currently working with a nutritionist as well as a personal trainer 3 times a week, recently built a home gym, yet still isn't using that stuff. So this is a person who is primed for what I do and has all the assets, just needs to have that mental factor really dialed in. What has been holding you back from making this change? And consider all these questions, because this is kind of like the principle that I teach on, should you put your pricing on your website? And the answer is, it depends. If you want to maximize the number of inquiries coming in, don't put the pricing on the website. If you want to minimize the number of inquiries coming in because your schedule is already practically full and you only want to talk to those people who understand the value of what you provide and are willing to spend that money, then absolutely put the pricing on the website. That correlates over to this because, well, I'll save this next point for a moment, because the more questions I ask, here's the result, the less inquiries I receive. However, here's the correlation. The more questions I ask, the better caliber of person who fills out the entire thing. Can I be bold right now? With the new iteration of how I'm doing this, I call it the Velvet Rope Strategy, and there's a new update to it as well. I'm at 100% with the people who have gone through this, and I'm very cautious to ever say 100%, but holy crap, I'm at 100%, which I'll tell you a little bit about what that is. Here's a few more questions. This is my favorite one. Why now? What was that turning point that had you reach out to me today? Here's a beautiful little leading question. How would you like to work with Jason Lynette? You should change that one to be your name. I have 3 answers to that one. 1, online private video conference. 2, live and in person in Northern Virginia. 3, combination of live and online. Some of you are already smirking because you're realizing the influence inside of that question. The 4th option is left out. Not at all. How would you like to work with Jason Lynette? By answering that, you are building the presupposition you are going to work with me. So a few others as well. Have you worked with a hypnotist before? That's an optional one. And again, depending on the software that you're using, and again, I highly recommend you use software this. It just makes the world a lot easier. You could ask things like, are you ready to make an investment of time and money in yourself? Yes or no. You can even be specific with pricing. I understand that programs begin at $500, and I'm willing to make that kind of investment in myself. If I can give you a recommendation, make every field required. With the exception of a last field, I always put in there, share any other questions or notes you may have. That one I don't make required. But I sincerely now have learned, require every field, which the benefit of this now becomes, again, I may get less inquiries, but I'm getting the high premium people that I want to work with nowadays, which let me just mention a quick resource here. You can make use of everything I've just shared with you and kind of figure it out on your own. Though, let me just put it out there. I've put together a resource on the Velvet Rope Strategy, as I call it, and buckle up for the pricing, folks. We sell this for just $27. I know. We've made it easy. Actually, several thousand people have already jumped into it, and this was the thing inside of Hypnotic Business Systems that so many people were raving about. So we went, you know what, let's spin it off. And let's let people see inside to see how it goes. So if you go to worksmarthypnosis.com/velvet, VELVET, that'll bring you over to a page for just $27. You can get the full step-by-step training. Even better, you're going to see me in real time, program the technology of this step-by-step. That way you can follow along in real time and have it done yourself. You're going to get a full PDF of all the questions that I ask, and you're going to see a real behind-the-scenes tour of the low-tech to high-tech ways we can do that onboarding even better. Though again, you can make use of everything I've shared and kind of guess and test and reinvent the wheel yourself, or $27, grab the Velvet Rope Strategy and follow along with me and have this thing done in the next 24 hours. It's that simple. So again, I've now since taken this application idea and I've brought it to all other parts of my business, which for one of the first times, I'll talk about this here. For those of you that are inside of my business training community, Hypnotic Business Systems, sometime in January, we're going to be adding a full tutorial on what I'm about to talk about because I've changed it up. So I ran the workshop of going, what happens if I put in the application? Ran it for about 2.5 years. Oh my God, it works so well. However, I then went, how do we change it again? And this is part of the principle of how I think about business. When things are at their absolute best, that's when you throw a wrench into the machine and go, let's see what happens. So I ran a bit of an experiment. And the experiment was asking myself, what if that consultation was no longer free? What if instead it was paid? And over time, I launched it as it was, as I teach it in Velvet Rope Strategy. And just simply by asking for a payment, it didn't work so well. So again, go back to where we started this conversation, the massive digital footprint. Nowadays, someone who goes to virginiahypnosis.com sees a big button that says click here to get started, but then it invites them to watch an on-demand webinar, an educational program that runs for about 20 minutes, fully automated, so I'm not the one doing it every time. And what that does is it teaches, here's what hypnosis is, here's what it's not, here's some success stories, here's what it's good for, here's your part of the process. It's doing a lot of the stuff that I used to have to say in person. I used to have to say in real time. And then, as I've now built credibility, as I've now built value, as I've now built rapport through the screen, it then intros the pricing. which feel free to head to virginiahypnosis.com/call to watch this thing in real time. I'm one of the few people that you can learn business from, that you can actually see what's working right now. I'm not just teaching the stuff that worked 10, 15 years ago. I'm not just teaching the stuff I did before removing myself from seeing clients. This is the actual stuff that I'm doing right now, so you know that it actually works. Somehow that shouldn't be revolutionary, but in our modern era, it kind of is. If someone's pitching you on the best ways to get found in the yellow pages, you laugh, but that crap is still out there. So rant over. So back to the application. Now, people watch the webinar, which then presents my pricing, which I won't reference here in the podcast because we're about to re-record this thing and bump it up again, because now the quality of the onboarding experience now makes it easier to then sell at a very respectable premium. But then here's the next pivot of language. You can imagine, though, this is a complex equivalence, by the way. You can imagine that, being in business this many years, we developed a bit of a problem. Too many people were calling, and not everybody was at the point of being ready. And the fact that you're still watching this presentation means that you're clearly one of those people who takes this change you're about to make very seriously. Which is why when you click the button below, it's going to give you the opportunity to schedule a half-an-hour call directly with me. I'm not going to pass you off to somebody else. It's going to be you and I together, one-to-one, talking about your goals. Now, you'll also note on that button, we ask for a $100 deposit to confirm that call. And assuming it goes as we both know it will, that then becomes a deposit toward your program. Or in the rare chance you'd rather not take action toward your goals, that $100 will be fully refunded by the time we wrap up the phone call. Transparent is how I'm going at that now. So take note of what I did there. Education first. Build the value first. That then gives the opportunity to which now, yes, once again, I'm receiving even fewer of these incoming consults, but the difference is now, these are all people who are primed and appropriate to go through a much higher level program. And yes, there's still the occasional one-off appointment. There's still the occasional exception of, hey, we can do that in 2 sessions. Just come in. Let's just resolve that. But for the most part now, because many of my clients, this is why I launched Hypnotic Language Hacks, the podcast, and the whole brand over at jasonlinett.com. Most of the clients I'm working with nowadays are entrepreneurs, business owners, where it's this combo of punching up their writing and their messaging, as well as everything from imposter syndrome to fear of public speaking. It's a much more robust change process. So it's even easier now to spend my time talking to those people. And quite simply, I'll tell you, I am referring more business out than I ever have in the past, because now I get to be even more selective because these automated systems are bringing in the exact people that I want. So this is where you should ask yourself, where are you right now in the shape of your business? Because even if you're in a startup phase, chances are you might still be doing another job. You might be inside of some other career, which even better, plug in the velvet rope strategy, as I call it, immediately. This way, you're only taking calls in the time where you're actually available to do so. Let's not get you fired from your other job before you leave it behind and go full-time as a hypnotist. If you're already out there seeing clients and recognizing some of this burden of the phone call coming in, and you want to find a better way to do that on your own, plug this in right away. I will also tell you, it's been even easier to appropriately raise my rates because, again, I'm providing even more value in advance. The quality of the program that you offer is directly proportionate to the quality of the service you create, yes, as well as the outcomes you help to produce, as well as the onboarding experience to back up that pricing. To which nowadays I'm at a premium in my area. I'm a premium around the world, in fact. And yet by the time the person sees that rate, they're already ready for it. And I'll tell you, I mentioned we're about to redo that automated webinar again because we need to add a new factor in. My stop smoking people, after they've watched that presentation, after they paid the $100 to schedule time, as much as I'm someone who is taught screen the person on the phone, by the time they've gone through those compliance hoops, they're just ready to work with me. And we need to go into, I'm using ClickFunnels for some of the sales side of this. We're in the process of rebuilding all the websites, so having our sales hosted on a third-party platform was massively helpful this year. And I love the platform. I'm going to stick with it. But the benefit now is we need to go in and program like a one-click upsell, which will be the equivalent of, hey, so the balance of the payment for stop smoking is this rate. However, we have found many people are sort of, ready to jump in right away. And if you'd like to skip the consult and just go ahead and schedule, click this button now to go ahead and process the balance payment, maybe with a small discount. And that'll give you direct access to the actual calendar application to schedule your appointment rather than go through the game of the consult, which, as we plug that in, I'm still going to pick up the phone and call those people. I've found that to be massively helpful in terms of my stop smoking clients. And I probably won't do that with the high level programs that I offer, the more, drawn out things, just because, again, that is a little bit more, I want to see what their goals are before I know which exact program to fit them into. But do you see how all of this conversation turns the table on the process? It's no longer that they're interviewing me to see if they want to hire me. It's instead that now I'm the one interviewing them to confirm that they're a match for what I do. I'm also not spending as much time in my office or on the phone talking to people who are just kind of curious. I'm not answering a lot of the basic questions about hypnosis that I used to ask. So from all accounts, my clients are getting better results. My people are able to book with me even more conveniently. Client feedback is at an all-time high. My income is at an all-time high. So this is a win-win, win-win. So once again, if you want to create this even faster, you're welcome to go back and listen to this podcast and figure it out on your own. But hey, I've put together a resource for just $27. Go to worksmarthypnosis.com/velvet, or just simply go to the show notes for this episode, worksmarthypnosis.com/302 will bring you right over there. You'll find it in both places. But check out that resource, put this into use. It's what we've received some of the best feedback on over the years in terms of content. And that's why we spun it off as its own individual program. So get out there and schedule time to make it rain. Jason Linett here once again, and as always, thank you so much for interacting with this program, for sharing it in your social media streams, continuing the conversation of building the incredible community of professional hypnotism. I'd encourage you once again, just simply head over to worksmarthypnosis.com/velvet. That'll bring you over to the page for just $27. You can actually grab the resource that's going to walk you through step by step. You can watch me in real time, program the technology of this, and even better, show you the onboarding, give you the exact questions that I ask, and give you that tour inside. Then again, if you want access to everything, check out hypnoticbusinesssystems.com. That's the all-access pass to my entire hypnosis business training library, chronicling of what worked to grow the business as well as what's working right now, though with a strong wink, go through Velvet Rope. It's going to give you a better deal. You know a guy. So check that out, worksmarthypnosis.com/velvet. See you on the inside.
Thanks for listening to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast at worksmarthypnosis.com.
Hey, it's Jason here, and reading is lame and videos are awesome. So do this right now. Go ahead and click subscribe right here inside of this video, and that will link you to my YouTube channel, and you will be the first to find out as new information is shared here online. Click subscribe now. Stay in touch. I look forward to hearing of your success very soon.